The one thing that I would like to do with this particular installation is I don't want to drill a bunch of holes into the shipping container, because then we have to worry about water leaks and rust and everything like that. So we're going to attempt to actually make this entire installation without drilling any holes. We might have to drill 1 or 2 holes to get the solar in, but for the most part, I really would like to accomplish this by not having to drill holes to mount the solar panels, as well as the inverter and all of the electric that we're going to be running. Welcome back to the Double K Farm channel. My name is Joe, and we moved from the city to the country to live a more self-sustainable lifestyle. And today we're going to take another step towards that self-sustainability by installing solar and an off-grid inverter into our 40-foot shipping container. So when we lived in the Fort Lauderdale area, I had a nice garage and I was able to store things in there. I had all my tools in there. I ran my 3D printers and even our food dehydrators in there. Most importantly, I was able to have like my air compressor and my grinders and charge all of my Milwaukee batteries out there. But once we moved here to the farm, we realized we don't have that capability since we live in a manufactured home. Or actually right now we live in an RV, but we are working on our manufactured home. So to fix that situation, we purchased a 40-foot one-time use shipping container. The problem is there's no power in there, and I really don't want to run power underground and get it into the shipping container. So we're going to install some solar panels on the roof, as well as an inverter with some lithium iron phosphate batteries in here. Now, for this video, we're going to be using the EG4 6000 XP as well as the EG4 batteries. Now, I do want to say that we have partnered with Signature Solar for this endeavor, and in exchange for us doing this video as well as really going over the installation, they did give us a small discount on purchasing all of these things. But Signature Solar has no say in how we produce the video or what we're going to be doing in it, and they don't get to see the video ahead of time. So we do want to thank Signature Solar for partnering with us on this, and I'll leave links for everything down below. Now, I have worked with Signature Solar in the past. We actually had the EG4 3000 XP in our old RV. And then you may remember, I'll leave a link right up here, we installed the EG4 3000 XP inverter into our YouTube studio, as well as a couple of the batteries and a nice little enclosure for those batteries. We're going to do something similar to that in this particular unit, but we're going to go with a larger unit. We're going to be using the EG4 6000, which, as you guessed, is a 6,000 watt inverter. More importantly, the 6000 XP is capable of running 240. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be installing 10 solar panels up on the roof. Each solar panel is 415 watts. We're going to put the inverter in here, and then we're going to put the same exact batteries and case that we put in our studio in here. If we need to upgrade the batteries in the future, we will. But for what we're looking to do, I think having 2 of the 100 amp hour 48 volt batteries is going to be more than enough. And if we really needed to, we could always connect to grid. Now, here's the thing. The one thing that I would like to do with this particular installation is I don't want to drill a bunch of holes into the shipping container, because then we have to worry about water leaks and rust and everything like that. So we're going to attempt to actually make this entire installation without drilling any holes. We might have to drill 1 or 2 holes to get the solar in, but for the most part, I really would like to accomplish this by not having to drill holes to mount the solar panels, as well as the inverter and all of the electric that we're going to be running. So let's get into this. So I think I've come up with a pretty good solution for mounting the inverter and the load panel to the wall without drilling any holes. I got a 4x4 sheet of 1/2-inch plywood, and then I drilled holes through it and mounted some magnets. You can see I've got magnets going all the way around the edge. So there's one there, one there, one there, one there, another one there, one on the bottom, goes all the way around. And then I also placed one in the middle, which we may have to take out depending on how the inverter and the load panel fall. And then what I did was, after drilling the holes, I just mounted magnets through here, and you can see that the magnets actually fall on the raised beams of the wall. So these are the magnets that I chose to use, and I use these for a couple of reasons. First of all, these are 200-pound force magnets. So considering that we have 11 mounted on the board, I feel like that's gonna be more than enough hold to the wall where the inverter and the load panel are not gonna go anywhere. But also you can see on here, they already have a threaded bolt attached to it, and it comes with a threaded bolt attached. It's got a nut on here, it's got a washer, and a lock washer. So this is everything you need, and they were pretty inexpensive. I'll leave a link for them down below. I bought a few boxes because I have a few different things that I'm gonna use these for. So all I did was drill the hole, and this is why I used 1/2-inch plywood, because that accommodated this bolt. Drilled the hole, put it through, tightened it down, and now we're gonna go ahead and put it up on the wall and see how hard it is to pull off. So it is kind of dark back here. I apologize for that. We're about 3/4 of the way towards the back of the unit. And I wanna place the inverter and the load panel right here. And I'm choosing this spot because it's towards the back. That allows me to run electrical wire wherever I need it. But also right on the other side is the main power for the house. So if I need to connect to grid, it would be a very easy run to go from my sub panel out there, dig a trench. It's only gonna be about 15 or 20 feet, and then come in and get it into the inverter. But right now, like I said, we're gonna try to run this completely off grid, especially when we consider that we've got 4,150 watts of solar that we're gonna be putting up on the roof. I don't think we're gonna need to connect to grid. The only reason we might is if we would go a long period without having any electric. And then again, I can always use a generator or something like that. But for now, we're gonna try to go without grid power. But if we need to, we're close to the main electrical box to be able to add it easily. Okay, so I'm gonna try to do this without moving everything, because I have a lot of the stuff that still has to go in the house once the house is done is all back here. That's another reason to put it right here instead of the back corner, because then I'd have to move everything I have in the shed. The thing is, trying to get this up, I feel like once it gets attached to the wall, it's going to be very difficult to move. So we're gonna have to really try to line it up perfectly with the magnets falling on the raised portions of the wall. Start off like right on the bottom. And then I'm just gonna lean it. Wow, that went in. But unfortunately, we need to shift it this way a little bit. This is gonna be the fun part. Okay, can we get it off easily? Well, since these magnets are not on, it may come off a little bit easier. Overall, I'm pretty happy with that. I think what I'm gonna do though is just get a level, even though it doesn't really matter, and just make sure that the panel itself is level. We have the inverter hung up, and this thing is not going anywhere. It's secured to that board. I used 3 screws on the top and 3 screws on the bottom. So the 2, one here and one here, actually go all the way through the board because they're in the middle of, you know, where you have your raised panel, and then the one in the middle falls right on that raised panel, and so it's just a 1/2 inch into the wood. But this thing is not gonna go anywhere. Now we're just gonna hang in the load panel. We're gonna put that right here. The next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna run our load wire from here to over here, and we're going to use 3/4 inch PVC conduit and 8 gauge wire. Now, one thing I did want to mention is some of the knockout sizes that are in here, because I couldn't find anything online. So over here, this is a 1.5 inch knockout. This one here is a 1 inch, a 1 inch, a 1 inch, and then this is a 1.25 inch knockout. Now, since we're not going to use 1 inch PVC conduit, what I did was I just bought these 3/4 inch adapters. So we put one down here on the bottom, then we're gonna put one up here, put this one, and then we're going to lock this tight. Now I have opted to use these just to clean up the installation and make it look just a little bit neater. So we're just gonna place them on here, and I'm gonna dry fit them right now until I can figure out the length. I'm also not gonna worry about getting this flush up against the board. We're simply gonna run from here to over here. This here is our battery cables, and for there, I'm just gonna use a clamp connector, and then I can just take the wires, run them back, attach them to the board, and then down into our battery box. Now we can go ahead and run the wires. It is super hot in here. I mean, I am pouring sweat. So if you ever need a sauna, don't bother going and buying one. Just come to Florida and sit inside of a shipping container in the middle of the summer. You'll do all the sweating you need. So I'm not gonna be showing a lot of me on this. I'm just gonna kind of run through the installation of everything. But I did wanna just touch on the fact of why I chose to use 3/4 inch, and it's simply cost. I already had a whole bunch of 3/4 inch conduit and connections, and I didn't want to buy a big 10-foot section of 1-inch conduit for this little like 2-foot length. Let's go over the connections here on the inverter. So this is our load. We're running it as a 240 volt system. So we have a red and a black. You can also use 2 blacks, up to you. But we have a red and a black going to this first breaker. That's our load breaker. Over here is going to be our ground. And then here is going to be our neutral. And then this is going to run over to our load center. Now over here on the load panel, we have our 2 hots coming in here. Here is our ground. Here is our neutral. And I did leave a little bit of extra cable instead of just cutting it. I always like to leave just a little bit of extra in case I have to manipulate things later. So there's just a couple of extra inches. This setup took 4 feet of wire for each color. So we've got the load panel up, we've got the inverter up, all of that wiring is done. And now I've gotten the batteries, I put them inside the server rack and wired them into the server rack, very similar to the video we did for our studio shed. So it's the same exact battery, same exact server rack. And now I've brought them over here and I've wired them into the inverter. So let me show you those connections, and then I'm going to show you what we're planning on doing as far as adding receptacles into this studio, once again, without drilling any holes. So we've got our positive over here, our negative over here. I used 1 gauge wire, and then this is the battery communication cable. Now there is a knockout over here for the communication cables, but since the only one that we're using is the battery one, I decided to just run it through here because everything has to go down into the server rack anyway. So far as I know, there shouldn't be any interference, but I'll pay attention to that. And then it's just running down here, and you can see I just bought one of these. This is the 1.5 inch hole, and we're gonna just tighten this down, and this way we don't have to worry about it accidentally pulling the wires or, you know, having any kind of issue if I move the cart around. Now I am gonna get like a cable cover to run down, and then we'll tighten this up against the wall, and it's coming down here into the server rack. Now, right now I just have it temporarily coming into this hole right here. But what we're gonna do is we're gonna actually get another clamp, and I'm gonna come into this hole over here. I just don't have any more clamps. I have to measure the hole and then run to Home Depot. Now down here inside of our server rack, same connections. We have our negatives on this side. They're going into the negative bus bar. Positives on this side going into the positive bus bar. We still have to put the covers on. We have our battery communication cable. So we have the top one to the bottom one. And then over here is the one that's feeding up into the inverter. I said this tip switch where the first one is down, the second one is down. We'll put the cable covers on. And again, we have room for 1 more battery if we want to add a 3rd battery into here. So let's do this. Before we even get into running all of the wire for our receptacles, let's go ahead and just test the unit. So the first thing we need to do is make sure all of these are off. And then over here, this needs to be in the off position. On this side, it also has to be in the off position. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna turn on our battery breaker, and then we're gonna come down here and we're gonna turn on our batteries. We're gonna do them one at a time. So we'll turn on the top one first. I'm going to give that about 5 seconds or so. Then we're going to come in, turn this one on. Now we're going to come over here and we're going to turn this on. And this should light up. And you can see the batteries are showing up here, so 52.6 volts. And then we're gonna come over here and turn this on. And let's see what happens. Should take a few seconds. And there we go, there's our inverter. We're putting out 120 volts. let's go ahead and grab a multimeter and check it. So this is the only way I can do it while still holding the camera. So I just have the multimeter over here. First thing we're gonna do is check the line side for 240. And we are getting 240. And then let's see if I can do this with one hand. Okay, I was able to get it there. So you can see our positive is going in up on the top. And then our negative we have going into the neutral bar, and you can see we're getting 120 volts. Last thing I want to check and see is, do we have any kind of voltage on ground? So we're going to come down here. And we've got no voltage on ground, so that's a good thing. So now what we're going to do is turn this breaker on. Check it here first. Should get 240. Perfect. Now we're going to come over here. We're going to check for 240 across the two positives. Getting 240. And now we'll check our neutral and see if we get 120. Got 120. Now let's check to see if we have any power on ground. No power on ground. I'll leave a link for this panel down below. I bought it at Home Depot, so it's not an affiliate link or anything, but this panel just was perfect for our needs. It is 125 amp with 24 circuits, but this was like a combo unit. It cost me like $79. It came with your ground bars. It comes with a neutral spot right there, and you can see the little green screw in there. That is your ground neutral bond screw. It also came with a couple of 20 amp breakers. Now that we know the system is working, we're gonna turn everything off, and I'm gonna start running all of the conduit for the receptacles. And here's my thoughts on running the load. First thing we're gonna do is install a light switch, and we're gonna put it right here on this board. We're gonna be using shop lights, but the shop lights have pull chains. So this is just really to turn them off if I needed to. But since we're all the way in the back in the shed, we're probably not gonna use this. We're just gonna use pull chains. But we're gonna run it here, and then from there, it's gonna run up this into the ceiling. Then we're gonna run, for now anyway, 2 lines for receptacles. So we're gonna have one coming out of here, one coming out of here. You're gonna use 1/2-inch conduit, and they're gonna be on 20 amp circuits. And then I'm gonna run that up to the ceiling, and then it's gonna go along that to the front. While we're up here, I wanted to show you, I decided just for safety's sake to add a couple of safety chains. So I basically just got these little chains. They're going up to those hooks up there, and I put eye bolts here so that if for some reason this would start to slip down a little bit, it can't go anywhere. After hanging all the weight on here, I haven't had any kind of an issue, except for when I was trying to bang out knockouts and moved a little bit. So I decided, let me just add some safety chains that the worst that would happen is it could slide down just as far as those safety chains are gonna let it go. Now the reason I'm running 2 separate lines is because I wanna be able to use some high power things. So I've got my air compressor over here. I also have my bench grinder for when we're sharpening blades for the tractor and the lawnmower. And you can't run those at the same time on the 20 amp circuit. So I wanted to have 2 separate circuits, and I also wanted to be able to charge batteries for all my Milwaukee and everything like that. So I figure for now, 2 separate 20 amp circuits should be plenty. I can always run more. We have plenty of space in the panel. So let's talk about how we're installing the receptacles onto the wall without drilling holes. Have any idea? Yep, you guessed it. We're using magnets. So I purchased these magnets on Amazon. This is them. And they come with lock washers as well as a nut. Again, I'll leave a link down below. And basically all we're doing is we're taking our outlet box, and you have these 4 holes, and we're putting one on the bottom and one on the top. Then all we have to do is take it to where we want to put it, and we're going to put it on the recessed part of the panel, and it's going to stay right there. And between having the magnets there and then the conduit, which is going to run up to the ceiling and then be connected up on the ceiling, these shouldn't go anywhere at all. The first one is run, and honestly, it's better than I thought it was going to be. Let's take a look at it. We're starting right here. It's coming all the way up to the ceiling, and I've got it specifically right on that hook. That's why it's in this particular spot. I have it zip tied there, and then every hook has a zip tie, and it's holding that conduit nice and snug. And then down here in the back, you can see it comes along like this, down, and into our box. So it's starting to get late. It's about 8 o'clock at night, and it's starting to get dark out here. So we're gonna call it for the night. Tomorrow we'll come back out, we'll run the other set of conduit, and then we'll get Rachel to come out and help us pull the wire. And I'm actually thinking, because I have an extra box, we're also gonna add a third circuit back here and put a set of receptacles right here on the board. So if I need to power anything or charge anything here in the back of the shipping container, we can. So the panel is completely wired with the exception of putting in the mini split. We haven't run that yet. But basically we have a 20 amp breaker here that is feeding down to a set of receptacles right here. This light switch is gonna feed lights that are gonna be up in the ceiling, and it's wired to that breaker. And then up here, we have 2 breakers that are feeding over to our receptacles in the front. And you can see this is how we have all of our conduit running. So it's just running all like that. And our conduit, you can see, runs along the top, comes down right here. We have 2 receptacles right there. And then the other one runs that way, down, and we have a receptacle right there. So we've completed all of the wiring for the shipping container with the exception of the wiring for the mini split. We're gonna do that later on after we install the mini split, but we have gotten everything else done. I already showed you all the receptacles. Let me show you what I did for the lights. So the lights are on this single 15 amp breaker. We'll go ahead and close this up. And they are wired to this light switch right here. This is just so that I can turn everything off. But we do have everything on pull chains. I already had the 14.2 in the metal conduit, so that's what we decided to use. And we just have that fished up here. It is zip tied to the PVC conduit. It comes over to here, and we just put an outlet in. And the reason I use an outlet is because I got these lights. They were very cheap. They were $25 a piece. So we have one right here, and they are held up by magnets. And then for the front of the shipping container, we have the outlet there, and it comes down to here. We have one here, and then another one over there, and you can connect these up to 4 in a string. So we may end up getting a 4th one and putting it up there in the front. But honestly, I don't think we're gonna really need it. I mean, there is plenty of light here in the shipping container, and it's kind of dark outside right now. The only real reason to add the 4th one would be so that there's one as soon as you come in the shipping container, because right now you can kind of see where it's like, I don't know, maybe a quarter of the way down. So you have to come in a little bit to get to the pull chain. We'll see how it goes. I can always add the 4th one later. The last thing we need to do is install the solar panels and then run the wire. So we're not gonna try to film the solar panels just because it's so hot. Basically, we're just laying them flat on top of the shipping container, and we're using magnets, so I'm gonna show you that. So we are up here on the top of the shipping container.
Not my favorite place right now.
Rachel's not enjoying being up high. We're doing all the solar panels. We handed our solar panels up here. We're putting the brackets on. And one of the turkeys...
I just want to be with you.
Felt lonely.
Whatever it takes.
So she came up here, and now she's just walking around up here with us. What are you doing? It's just a matter of time before all the other ones figure out where she is. You okay?
Not really.
So all of the solar panels are in. We have a total of 10. Each one of these is 415 watts. So you can see we have 8 running like this. And then there's 2 more on the end that are running the opposite way. And that's just so that we can fit them all in. Now, as far as mounting them, we went with the same thing and we used magnets. So we put regular solar panel roof mounts on here, and then we attached the magnets through here. We just had to drill a hole in the center so that we could mount it. And each one of these are 275 pound force magnets. And you can see it takes a lot of effort to lift them up. So, and this is the very end. So we have one here, and then we have one over there. And then when they join, to save money on magnets, what we did was we put one magnet holding 2 of them together, and we drilled the hole through. And as you get in here, you really cannot lift these up. It takes a lot of force to lift these up because, you know, you've got the one over here, the one over there, and then you're also trying to lift up the weight of the magnets. Now, something else you should notice is the way these fall, we have the raised panels. So one side is on a raised panel like this, and then the other side is in the ridge, just like this. And that actually helps us out a little bit because it's putting each panel at a slight angle so that water could run off of it. Now, I know this is not the most efficient way to install solar panels. Since they are flat mounted on the roof, it means they're not angled directly at the sun. But I'm kind of looking at it like an RV install. I mean, they're flat mounted on the roof on our RV and we do just fine with them. We're also taking into consideration the fact that we have 10 panels. That's 4,150 watts. So even if we're not getting the most out of the panels, I think we have more than enough panels to make up for the less efficient way that we have them mounted. But we didn't want to give up grazing land for future cattle or sheep or anything, so I didn't want to ground mount them. It also meant digging trenches. So I think we're going to be just fine having them mounted this way. It just, like I said, means that once in a while we may have to come up here and clean them off if you get a bunch of water spots from excess rain coming up here. So these panels are mounted in series. So we have all 10 panels mounted in series, and then the wires come together right here. And then they are coming down as I go down the ladder in through this vent that I drilled holes. And then we're just gonna put some sealant around this so that water can't come in. And all 10 panels, like I said, are running in series. It is a single string, giving us just over 4,000 watts. But more importantly, we're looking at the voltage, and it comes in, I think, at a nominal voltage of 387 volts. And the 6000 XP is capable of 475 volts into each string. You can run 2 strings with each of them being 4,000 watts. So the PV wires are coming through the vent on the outside, through the holes that were already there, and then I just have them attached to the board. They run down the side of the inverter, and then they're coming down into the PV array DC isolator. So they come in right here. We have the red on this side, the black on this side. I don't want to take this apart. But down on the bottom, they run to the bottom, red on this side, black on this one. And then up here, you have red and black. This is our disconnect. And then they run up into here. If you're curious as to why we decided to use the EG4 6000 XP for this installation, it's for a few reasons. First of all, it had just the right amount of capabilities that I was looking for to have in the shipping container. You know, when I was really looking around, I had a couple things that I absolutely wanted. Like, I wanted something that had at least 5,000 or 6,000 watts, something that was capable of 240, and something that was in a smaller form factor. And this thing honestly hits all of those things. We don't really need a 12,000 watt inverter in here because this is just a workshop and a storage unit. We're not living in here, and I honestly don't foresee myself ever needing more than 6,000 watts at any particular given time. Yes, we could have, put a big system on the house and then run everything off the house, but we're trying to keep all of our outbuildings on separate grids. So we have the one in here. We installed a separate solar installation into our studio shed. We'll do the one for the house, and then any future buildings we erect, whether they be sheds, shipping containers, or little barns, they'll all have their own systems in it. This way, everything is kind of separate, and we're not putting a big drain on our main house system. Now, like I said, I love the form factor of this. It doesn't take up a lot of room, and it's very minimalistic. Everything is in the unit. So we have breakers for our battery, so we don't have to have an exterior breaker. We have a breaker right here for our load. We have a breaker for grid if we decide to put in grid. We have a breaker if we want to put in an external generator. We have a solar disconnect over here. Over here is Wi-Fi. It's literally everything here. And then it does have this nice screen up here so that you can see everything that's going on with it, as well as having Wi-Fi so you can monitor it on your phone. The only thing extra we put in is having a separate PV isolator, and that again is just for safety so that we can pull everything in and be able to work from here into the system without having to worry about getting electrocuted. But more importantly, what I really liked about this EG4 6000 is the fact that it is very easy to install. As someone who's done several solar installations, including a couple of major builds like the one that I recently did in my Alliance Avenue 30BH, And I'll leave a link for that installation up here. That was a pretty extensive system. If you haven't seen that video on our RV channel, I installed 2 Victron 5000 multi-pluses, an entire link shunt system, 2000 watts up on the roof, 2 24-volt batteries, as well as 2 solar charge controllers. And that was a very extensive system. And for what I was looking for in the RV, it's perfect, but it takes up a lot of room. I mean, if you look at that installation and then look at this one, there's a huge difference. For the RV, I didn't want to go with this kind of system because of the noise, as well as the fact that it requires a lot of voltage to run the solar system, which is why I went with the Victron system. But for in here where the noise isn't that big of a deal and we had the space to put a lot of solar and a lot of voltage, it was perfect. And as far as the batteries and why I decided to use the server rack batteries as well as the server rack case, it's honestly because they're easy to move around and it's very expandable. I did think about getting the wall mount batteries, but again, I didn't want to mount anything on the wall. And even if I laid it on the floor, they are very heavy to move. Also, in talking to the folks at Signature Solar, they said these would actually charge faster. If I want to expand on them in the future, I can, or I can always switch to a different type of battery later and then take these batteries and put them in another installation. As of now, I don't think we're going to need to, but what we're going to do is just continue to do some testing, and we'll come back in about a month or so and let you know how everything went. We've been running the EG4 6000 XP inverter in our shipping container for about a month now, and I couldn't be happier. This thing has absolutely exceeded our expectations and provided more power than I even thought I was going to get. It has been nice that we're able to have a shop lights in here and see what's going on in the early morning or at night without having to have a headlamp and flashlights. But more importantly, I've been able to charge all my Milwaukee batteries, sharpen all of the chains for my chainsaws, run the bench grinder to be able to sharpen all of our blades for our lawnmower, and even our air compressor. Not only that, we've also installed an EG4 mini split in here, which I will show you the installation in a future video. But we were also able to actually process 25 chickens using the electric in here. For processing chickens, we actually have an electric scalder as well as the plucker. And this thing was able to provide enough power to run all of that, run the air conditioner, and do everything else. And we have not yet seen the batteries drop below 80%. During the day with the 4,000 watts that are up in the roof, the batteries pretty much always sit at 100%, even with the air conditioner running. It's just overnight where they tend to drop some. And again, that's because we are running the air conditioner in here 24 hours a day because it is summertime and because we haven't insulated in here. So it has to work really hard to keep the temperature somewhat comfortable as well as keep the humidity out of here. The only complaint that I would have with this system so far would be that it is a bit loud. So I'm purposely standing here in front of the inverter and I'm not doing any sound editing, and you can hear it running behind me. But again, I am in a shop, so that's not that big of a deal. But I would say if you're going to install this for your house, I would definitely do it in like a separate room or in an enclosed shed outside. Or definitely not someplace where you don't want to hear that constant fan noise. But for what we're using it for, this thing has been an absolute beast. And I know if I added a couple more batteries, we'd probably even be able to run our Harvest Right freeze dryer in here without ever touching the electric in the house. So far, we have not even thought about having to run from the grid to here to keep the batteries charged because the solar panels on the roof have been doing such a phenomenal job. Now, we will do another video kind of going more in depth with the capabilities of the EG4 6000. The purpose of this video was really just to show you how I was going to do this installation without drilling a bunch of holes in here, and it absolutely worked perfectly. Now, I do want to say thank you one more time to Signature Solar for supporting today's video, and I want to thank you guys for supporting the sponsors who support our channel. If you need any kind of solar needs, whether it be server rack batteries, components, solar panels, or a complete all-in-one system, check out the links down below for Signature Solar. Now, like I said, in the future, we'll do some more in-depth videos for this particular system, and we're also planning an even larger build for our house where we're going to use their new grid bosses and flex bosses. And I'm really excited about that one because our goal is to get the house as close to off grid as possible when it comes down to the power consumption. Now, if you got any use out of this video, if it's helped you in any way, please do us a favor, head down below and hit the like button on this video. When you do that, that's going to do two things. Number one, it does help build our channel, but more importantly, it really does let us know what kind of videos you guys are looking to see. And until next time, bye.